Hey, Gabriel Blake.
Hey, Gabriel Jose.
Where are we today?
I'm still in San Francisco and you're still in Chicago, and I keep waiting for you to come back.
But first you'll have to unlock your device.
No, Google. No one needs your help right now. But yeah, thanks for the guest star appearance of my phone and the Google Assistant. But you know that it's a two-way street. You can also come to visit Chicago.
And I will next month.
Okay, looking forward to that.
Me too.
Yeah. But in the meanwhile, what did we watch this time?
We watched the Ridley Scott 1982 film Blade Runner. My mind blanked for like 2 seconds.
Okay, cool. I assume that this is like part of what we're going to be like discussing. If you're going to be like remember it when you couldn't even remember the title, like less than a week
Yeah,
after
we're
watching
just going
it.
to be constantly like trying to get me to remember because I
Exactly.
watched the movie 4 days ago, so I remember almost nothing.
Yeah, it's a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
This was your pick, actually.
It was my pick, and I can't remember specifically why I chose it, but I wanted to examine Blade Runner versus Blade Runner 2049 at some point. So this is the first step. Let's talk about this, and then in the future I'll make you watch the better one, the one with Ryan Gosling.
Okay, let's just leave it there. Yeah, I think that when we actually talk about this, I brought it up to the list about. I only watched once, the one with Ryan Gosling, directed by Denis Villeneuve. And I was curious because I remember like loving the aesthetics, but I felt like it didn't live up to the expectations that I have. So personally, I watched this movie like many times, so I'm really happy of just watching it once more.
So wait, let me ask you, when is the last time you watched it before this week?
It was probably like 4 years ago. It had been a while since the last time that I watched it. Probably.
But you were a full-grown adult with well-developed opinions. And...
Yeah, the first time that I watched it, yeah. And the last time, yeah. I was still like a full developed adult. And as this was your pick, I think that is my turn to summarize it. So
yes, please.
So this movie takes place in Los Angeles in 2019, in a dystopian 2019, where they don't do like too much exposition. The only exposition that they do is at the beginning when they actually say that is like robotics have evolved, and now there is a new model of robots that they're called replicants. That they are basically like humans. They look like humans. They think they are as smart as their creators, but they are super strong. And the only thing is that they only last for a limited number of years. So there is a revolt in one of the outer planets that they don't develop too much about it.
Yeah, they didn't say nothing. And I want to clarify right now, we watched the final cut.
Correct. Yeah,
Yes.
correct. That is from 2007. So probably the first time that I watched it, maybe it was not this, maybe it was the director's cut, and then I watched this because I remember like some small differences. So yeah, that's the setup. Is like there is some revolt in an outer planet, and there are like some group of replicants that they actually escape and come back to Earth. Then they tell us about it.
Sorry to interrupt, but the people left on Earth are basically like the losers, the unhealthy, the people who are not like deemed worthy to travel to other planets, other destinations. So it's kind of like a shanty town. It's like the
Yeah, I mean, basically, the planet has been destroyed, like probably by climate change. Is that you see, like in LA, like raining most of the time. Is that's something really bad had to have happened for rain in LA all the time, or in California in general. So that's that, and also like most animals have died because they talk like multiple times about like owls being super expensive, or snakes like the real thing. So they genetically engineer other animals. At the same way that they did with humans and and the replicants. So that's the setup, and they tell us that they are a specialized body of the law It's not really. I mean, it's a policeman, but it's not. That is the Blade Runners. That they are the ones charged with hunting down replicants. And the replicants, as they look like human, and probably physiologically they're also like pretty similar to humans, or they don't have X-rays or any other way of detecting, So the only way of detecting if they are replicants or not is like asking them a set of questions, and they may react
To like
in specific
disrupt
ways.
them psychologically, and they would have some sort of tell, like,
Emotion.
oh, nope, this is a human.
Yep. So the story opens with the interview of one of those dissidents, of those revolting, I don't know exactly how to call them, but evil replicants, and how he kills another Blade Runner, that he was interviewing him. So then it cuts to Harrison Ford and how he gets recruited to just hunting like the remaining ones. Now, there is a strange thing, because they show them in a very retrofuturistic 80s version of ATV, the remaining 4, but at the same time they tell him that there used to be 6, 3 male and 3 female, but there are only 4.
Yeah, the accounting didn't quite make sense to me this time, because yes, 6 replicants escaped that off-world place. Ultimately 4 make it to Earth, and maybe there's some detail where they said, well, 2 died immediately. I missed that, but yeah. Ultimately there's 4 on Earth that Harrison Ford is responsible for hunting down.
Initially. Initially. So he starts investigating a bit more about like where they can be, and he goes to the what's the name of the corporation? The Tyler Corporation?
Something like that. It's very similar.
Yeah, so he goes to Tyler Corporation and he talks with the owner, and he gets introduced Tyler Corporation.
Tyrell.
Yeah, Tyrell. And he gets introduced to Rachel. That is a woman that she actually has like a mini role on the sequel, if I recall correctly. But spoilers alert. So he starts trying to detect if she's a replicant, just for giggles, from Tyrell. And it takes him like 150 questions to just realize that she's in fact a replicant, but she doesn't know it, and that's the reason why she didn't have like a clear emotional response to the questions. So then the hunt continues. The evil replicants, they are trying to hunt down, getting to see Tyrell with the idea of extending their life expectations. Because one of them is like starting to die, Roy, and the other ones, they also want to just live forever, let's say, on Earth.
Because the replicants are so dangerous, humans decided to make them die after how many years? Is it 4?
4 years. But the thing is like, just skipping a bit forward, is that when Roy talks with Tyrell, is that he actually asking, is like, can you change like the life expectation? And they say like, we tried all of these, but I didn't understand if it's like once that you are created, that life expectation cannot change, or is that there is no way, like even what we are doing, that we can actually make replicants that they last longer. I didn't get like a clarity.
It's a little bit ambiguous. It seemed like it was like a fail-safe for humans to protect themselves against them and say, hey, you can only live 4 years. But when the replicants kind of have the power and they say, hey, make us live longer, the creator was like, no, it's impossible. So I think that it's only something that could be configured, for lack of a better word, in the creation of the replicants.
Probably. Honestly, that may be the case. It doesn't change much, because at the end, is like what he cares about is just changing. He doesn't care about replicants as a whole. He cares about himself, and it's like whatever happens is that's not going to be like changing that he's about to die at that point of the story. So, in any case, there is like investigation. Harrison Ford, Rick Decker, tells Rachel that she's a replicant. She freaks out, she disappears, she goes rogue, quote unquote. So they also task him that he needs to actually hunt her down too. But he says like, I'm not going to be doing that. And 30 seconds later is Leo, that is one of the replicants, the one that kills the other Blade Runner at the beginning, tries to kill him, and he gets saved, Decker gets saved by Rachel. So it's like, now I owe you, I cannot give you up, you know. But it's like, but you're going to be haunted if you try to make a run for it.
And it's that situation that poses the question that's the most interesting thing about the film, is if Rachel didn't know she was a replicant, does anybody know for certain that they're not a replicant?
Yep, and she basically turns the question back to Harrison Ford's character. It's like, how do you know that you are not a replicant? Did you ever take this test? Or are your memories actually implanted too? You know, because we see, like, for example, Rachel playing the piano. And when she's playing the piano, it's like she's playing like a piece that he had there. It's like, unless you are like really, really talented, it's like probably this was not the first time that you saw that specific piece. And it's one hell of a coincidence that Harrison Ford had that piece in there. It's almost like, oh, you guys like share like partially the same memories. And also there is like the ultimate sign that is the unicorn, but that's a bit more like just on your face, let's say.
I wondered how deep you wanted to get into the like metaphors and symbolism, because that unicorn origami, it leaves so many questions.
Well, no, I don't think so. I think that is a bit more. I think that is like pretty direct on the perspective of just Gav. I think that it was the name of Edward James Olmos' character. Gav, yeah. He's from a passive way telling him that, hey, you can run away, but it's like, we're going to be like hunting you guys, you replicants, down. It's like, we know what you are, you know. It's like, from that perspective, it's a bit more, it's like, yeah, I mean, I can let you go because you just did like a big favor, but that doesn't mean anything else.
That's not the end of things. Like,
correct.
Life is going to continue on just like this.
Yeah. And that's the other reason why I want to watch 2049, because I don't remember how they connect to this. It's like, okay, there is the part about like having a son and whatever, or having a daughter, but there is like other stuff. I don't remember exactly how they connected the Rachel was a replicant.
So after that synopsis, let me ask you your opinion specifically on how strong the story was. Not the visuals, because I think we'll establish later. Visually, this film is incredibly impactful. It was the first of its kind. But if you just look at the story and the strength of the plot, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts is that given that it's based on a short story, they develop quite a bit of a world. Not only from the visual perspective, but also about like narratively. It's like they created like a believable world, let's say. That's the first thing. Now, the specific story, and I appreciated that we watched it like back to back to Casablanca, it feels a bit more of a classic movie noir kind of thing. There are like some gaps, as we were saying, about like we are not completely sure about like if this was left ambiguous on purpose or not. But I think that the story is solid. You know, I won't say that it's like, oh yeah, you know, is that the script is what is carrying this.
And I would agree. If you compared this script to like a classic noir film from the 40s or 50s, this is on par, 100%. Yeah. And Deckard is, I do want to say archetype, but I don't want that to be reductive. But he is the archetypal detective of a noir film, just placed in the future, in this futuristic like combination of Asian and American culture in LA in 2019, which is almost 30 years ahead of when this film was released. Yeah.
Well, it's 37 years, almost 40.
Wait, this came out in 82 and it's supposed to take place in 2019. So 19 years? I can't do the math.
37 years.
Oh my god. Yeah, you're right.
Okay. I'm not judging you right now.
You are judging me.
But silently.
So today, it would be 39 years ago. So next year, this film will turn 40.
Yeah, so I think that is like way ahead of its time, you know. And then it's like we haven't gotten into the visuals or the music. The music, I think that is perfect, you know, like the Bangladesh music. I think that it fits like completely like the tone that they're going for, you know, of noir, and at the same time like a bit disenchantment, and this kind of electronic 80s, but it fits pretty well with the cyberpunk aesthetic that it has. And the special effects is like, it's true that this version is super clean up. It's like, you look at the first version, it's true that you guys actually like took some freedom for this part to just make it look a bit better. Well, quite a bit better, let's just say,
So you mentioned cyberpunk. I would argue that this film set the baseline. Baseline sounds kind of reductive. This film kind of sets a precedent for what cyberpunk can be. I think this is the first real cyberpunk film. Is that wrong?
No, I could agree with you. I would say that it's like the biggest representative, and I don't know if there would be like something before it. Let's say, I mean, Akira was in '88. Yeah, and it looks, actually the manga of Akira started in '82. Just trying to think. Media. I'm just checking the Wikipedia, sorry. Yeah, they basically just put it like that.
So I mentioned that specifically because I do think this film is incredibly important for being the first of its kind. Similar to, don't hate me for saying this, the way that The Matrix is important. Like, those special effects and that kind of mood and tone, it was the first of its kind. You're making faces. People who are listening can't see the faces you're making, but tell me why you reject what I'm saying.
Because you're younger. You're like way younger, It's like I don't see like anything important about The Matrix, I think that it was like in the right time, in the right place, and that's the reason why people have like that kind of appreciation for that movie. But from a cyberpunk aspect, it's like that because the part of the real world is cyberpunk. It's like it's just desolated. It's a step, like dominated by the machines, but they use like the same kind of darkness in it. I find it like very whatever, that's my personal thing.
So the reason I bring up The Matrix is not because it's cyberpunk, it's because it was, in my opinion, the first of its kind in terms of special effects. Whereas those special effects they've been kind of built out in the last 20 years, and they've become more impressive. So The Matrix today doesn't seem that impressive, but if we take into account the context of the time, it's very impressive. And I feel that way about Blade Runner. When I look at Blade Runner as somebody too young to watch the film when it came out in 1982, I see this as it's been done many times, and maybe not as well as Blade Runner, but it's been done many, many times. But Blade Runner is important because it was the first.
Just think that 3 years later, Brazil was released, and we actually recorded about Brazil, or at least talk about it.
We did. We recorded about Brazil. I hated it.
I know, but it's like, from that perspective, it's like it's still like early on. It's like only 3 years after that. And it's like, it's true that it builds upon what Blade Runner was. Probably, like the concept was already like just being worked on, but it's another like cyberpunk, future, dystopian kind of reality. Matrix, just tell me, you're talking about like the special effects. I have to ask you, what is that special effect that it has influenced so much? Like the current cinema.
I can't speak intelligently about how this has impacted, how the Matrix has impacted special effects, but specifically where Carrie-Anne Moss would be jumping up, and they had all of those cameras surround her, and it was slow motion. Nothing like that had ever been done before. Nothing like that.
But has it been done after?
Yes, in the Matrix 2 and 3.
But what I'm saying is like they actually came up with a novelty about like, wouldn't it be cool if we actually freeze the frame and we use like these 20 cameras like just around, for actually just creating this, like effect. They use it and abuse it, on these movies, but no one else use it later.
So you're calling into question my entire understanding of the Matrix, because I understood the Matrix as being like groundbreaking in terms of special effects, but when you ask me these questions, I'm like, wait, were they? Were they important?
Well, the thing is that they can be groundbreaking about like this is the first time that something is done. You know, like what was Polyester by John Waters that he actually did like the scratch and smell, and that was like the first time that it was done, and it was the last time. It was groundbreaking.
Nobody cared after that.
Nobody cared. So that's the reason what I say is that I differentiate in between like is it influential because there has to be like more stuff that happened afterwards. It's like the Matrix wouldn't have happened without Blade Runner. It couldn't.
And why do you say that? I don't doubt you, but please tell me more.
Because I think that Blade Runner is the one that kick-started, well, I mean, without Blade Runner or with whichever was like the first one that started like with the cyberpunk genre. That wouldn't have happened. It's like you can actually see the influence of Blade Runner like pretty clear in other movies, and you see like the influence. The same way that we can say that Casablanca has influenced like a lot afterwards, you know, from a perspective of how many reference you see in other movies, even if it's not copying like anything like that, you know, but at least you see that it's like there is a clear reference to that. But with the Matrix, it's like, yeah, maybe there have been like parodies. I know like a Scary Movie has like some parodies about like just pretending like doing that slow-mo thing, but I'm talking is like if the reason why we are saying that the Matrix was important is because of the special effects, I want to know is like which special effects, because I don't think that the stop camera thing like happened.
So I can't answer that question, but I will say that I tried to compare it to The Matrix because my understanding is that it was fairly important in terms of the visual aspects of the film.
Okay.
So in Blade Runner, I do feel like visually it's incredibly appealing and impressive. And I do think it's important because of that, but in terms of story, I feel like it was pretty basic. And yes, it does ask that question that's extremely interesting. How do you know if you're a replicant or a human? That is a question that can, you know, be discussed over and over ad nauseum. Yeah. But I think what this film has going for it is the visual kind of aesthetic that it built. We see Deckard eating Chinese food in a tiny alley in Los Angeles. That's the impact that this film had for me. In terms of story, it doesn't have much to offer.
Personally, I mean, as this like something personal, you know, like completely, is like for me the story as someone that likes film noir, it's something that I appreciate, like this kind of, okay, let's just like translate like classic cinema noir into a completely crazy, completely different setting that it was never done before. You know, if that's like the biggest strength is, as I told you, is like no, because this story is that you can just change replicants for femme fatale, you know, like classic femme fatale, and it's like, and you have like a similar story to this. The only thing is like it portrays like these additional questions about like how can you know you're a human, but they don't develop them as much as they could. They don't play as much with that. It doesn't try to be like a psychological thriller.
And I do think that's an important call out, that you, as a cinema watcher, you have a great appreciation for film noir. I have less of appreciation, so this film will have a different impact in both of us. But I appreciate this sort of film teaching me kind of the, what would you call it, the like lapses I have in my knowledge.
But I mean, you have watched, I mean, I forced you to watch some noir in the past.
Yeah, it's not that I haven't seen it, it's that I don't have like an educated appreciation for it.
Okay, no, that's completely fair. We talk about like this classic Hollywood cinema that is like something that you don't feel too related to it.
Yeah, there's not a connection with me.
Yeah, that's completely fair. Like for me, it's like this is, I wouldn't say like the pinnacle of cinema, but it's like I recognize how important it is. I love sci-fi, I love noir, so it's a movie that is pretty easy for me to resonate with. You know, but I also recognize that story-wise is, except like some specific quotes that we don't have to go over them, is like no one is going to be like us quoting like every single line. I would say that it's still good. It's still like a snappy dialogues from time to time, like Harrison Ford. Like some of the lines that they have is like it's good. You're still like just playing an archetype, but it's a better archetype than Han Solo.
So, as a fan of Blade Runner, how excited were you when Blade Runner 2049 was announced?
I was a skeptic, because it's one of those movies that, given how it ends, that it gives you like the idea, or at least is how I always interpret it, is like they run away and they're going to be like hunted down. Potentially, Harrison Ford is also a replicant. That from that perspective, they're going to be like dying in a couple of years. So you're going to be doing a sequel that takes place 30 years later. What is the meaning?
So based on the very little that I remember about Blade Runner 2049, I mean, spoiler alert, Harrison Ford lives forever, basically. Do we understand from 2049 that he is not a replicant? I don't remember.
I think that we know that he's a replicant. I think because they defend the daughter that he had, because Ryan Gosling for a while thinks that, oh, maybe the son of Harrison Ford. And then he was like, no, it's like this girl that is like trapped in this prison. And if I recall correctly, there was like a group, like a resistance group of replicants, that they were using the daughter as like a sign of these replicants can just do anything that humans can. They just had a child of their own.
So I will say that we do plan on watching Blade Runner 2049 and discussing it further.
Yeah, and I may be like just completely wrong about what I remembered about the movie.
I think that you probably remember much more about Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049. That's why I asked you as like a subject matter expert, because you really like this film. And
yeah, I do. And I appreciated this movie. I think that it was exactly 2 hours. Blade Runner 2049, I think that it was 2 hours and 40 minutes.
It's really that long? Oh,
it was really long. It's like all the part of Ryan Gosling falling in love with the AI is like, that's the movie. It's okay, I understand that you're like just trying to talk about like different types of love that they could actually happen in the future, how humans like adapt to this, but do I need it? No, I do not.
No, we all saw her. We all saw it.
Yeah.
We get it.
Yep. And we all saw the acting skills of Ryan Gosling. He's pretty.
He's very talented. He has a beautiful chest, is what I meant to say.
Exactly. But no, I had to say that the special effects is still impressive. Like the kind of, I think that more than the special effects, I would say like the creative direction that they have. It's not only about like just raw power of throw more polygons here. It's a bit more that you are building a wall, and you are like, in Brazil we discuss about this, about like sometimes it felt like cardboard and it actually just pulls you away from the fact. It's like in this, it felt like they went big studio to most stuff.
So you and I have had ongoing conversations for years about the importance of this film or how relevant it is, and when I watched this film this time, I paid extra close attention to what I was seeing visually. And what you see in this film, I believe, is truly groundbreaking, and filmmakers have tried to recreate it with varying degrees of success, but I do feel finally, for the first time, that this film is fairly important in terms of what you're actually seeing on the screen. It's impressive, it's unique, it's different, it's compelling.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think that it was like a really a visionary kind of work.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's like just being able to connect, because it's true, it's like the 80s, and sometimes like the stuff from the 80s feels like pretty dated. Not dated about like, oh, they didn't have the mediums, dated about like they didn't have the taste.
Yeah.
And on this one is that there were a couple of times that I was like, even the clothes feel okay, and at that point it's like, no, that shirt that Harrison Ford is wearing is like, that's not okay. And then it was like just they saw Rachel, is like, and those shoulder pads, hello 80s. But it's still acceptable.
I don't want to get to the questions too fast, because when we ask the question, is this timely or timeless, I would argue both. It's firmly rooted in the 80s, but it's also so firmly rooted in timelessness.
Because I think that is bold. I think that it's actually bold. It's like, yeah, we cannot change that we are in the 80s, but it's that we're going to try to get like a futurist version, from where we are right now. But that futurist is like so well made. No one has phones. You know, it's like mobile phones, they don't exist in that reality, but you roll with it. You know, it's like personally I feel it's like, that's fun. This is an alternative story kind of thing. It's like, imagine that 2019 had been like that. The problem, well, we will get to 2049. I think that it may be more timely than this one. Even like when it was released, it was a bit more, it's like, okay, I see what you're doing, you know? And it's like you're like just building upon the previous one, but you are building in a very conservative way from a visual perspective.
But there are such interesting details about the set design. Like if you think about Deckard's apartment, it's the walls and I think the ceiling are completely covered in these tiles that are very interesting. And those were taken from a Frank Lloyd Wright house. And that design from Frank Lloyd Wright is over 100 years old. And so if you think that like this design from a 100-year-old architect applies to something that is so futuristic, so you can see the design is literally timeless and can seem futuristic while at the same time being classic, like that's the sort of thing I find interesting about this film.
Well, I think that is more interesting. I think that it's about, I can take elements that they're classic, and when you combine it properly, it can just give this outlandish futuristic feeling to it. Because the Bradbury building is like from what, the 20s or the 30s? You know? And it's like, it looks amazing, you know, it actually just translates like pretty well like the dilapidated reality that they are in, but at the same time like being futuristic. So it's
that's what I find fascinating about this film, is this ability to take great design that's indicative of like the history and seems futuristic. That's what I love about this film. I think, can you think about another movie that is succeeded in a way? The only thing that comes to mind is The Fall. The Fall takes design from thousands of years ago, from hundreds of years ago, and it turns it into this. It's not futuristic, I'll give you that, but it feels very fresh and modern, what they do with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think about futuristic movies, you know, because the thing is like when you are looking back, as The Fall was made in the 2000s, I think, is that you have like a different frame of reference, you know. It's like it's a bit more like all of this happened. It's like I only need to recreate this. When they do the outlandish stuff, it's still like just rooted in reality. It's not rooted in, you know, stuff that didn't really exist. That's the reason why they went around the world.
Like historic design, like celebrated design, and makes it feel futuristic. I can't give you a solution.
The only one that I was thinking, and you can say like that's cheating. I mean, it's true that it's not cyberpunk, but I could see like some people arguing about it. Is Alien, also by Ridley Scott, 79.
I would have to rewatch that movie. I've seen it. I don't remember much from it.
Yeah, but I think that for a while there was this crappy futurism about like, no, futurist, you know, the future is not going to be like also like the Jetsons, you know. It's like future is like we're going to be like destroying everything is going to be gritty and dirty. You're going to roll with it, and I think that actually aged better than the futurist that is a bit more about like, oh, look how amazing the future is going to be.
So would you say this is kind of like sci-fi in the past used to be about this glorious future, this technological future, everything is great, and there's a switch at some point where whatever expectations we have of the future turn to like an apocalyptic world? Do you feel like this falls into that like transition from the future's going to be great and the future's going to be awful?
I think so. I mean, I think that futuristic movies is that they tend to be a bit more about like it can look great, but it's not. You know, it's a bit more like in the surface level. I mean, just think about Metropolis, for example. Is that they show you first about like that utopia that he's like on that garden with all the women like running behind him, and then when he go to the guts of the city and he can actually see how fucked up everything is.
It's like just exposing, yes, this can exist, but there's a cost. There's an ugly, ugly cost.
Yeah. And the only thing that I'm saying is that this Blade Runner is at the same time like rooting reality, as you were saying, and at the same time like trying to be imaginative. You know, it's that they are not flying cars, but the flying cars that only the police has feels like it's, like pretty limited, and it's still like realistic. It doesn't feel like, oh my god, is this like impossible, that is not going to be happening at that time. I think that is like for the 80s, I think, okay, this is actually pretty decent. This could have happened, quote unquote.
So I'm very curious to answer the questions that we have, because to be honest, I expected you to be more effulgent and enthusiastic about this, and I feel like you're not.
Well, I'm enthusiastic about it, but I have to say that out of all the times that I watched it, is that this was like the time that I was a bit more, it's like, yeah, remember this. It's not like I was thinking about like, okay, I'm going to be like just getting a bowl of popcorn and it's going to be like my 2 favorite hours of the week, and probably they were. I told you that I had a very shitty week. This was on Monday, so probably they were like my favorite 2 hours of the week. So
it was escapism at its finest.
Correct. Yeah. It feels like life-changing. It's like, well, I already know the gist. I already, know the signs that they are like just telling you that it's like, hey, actually he may be a replicant, and it's not the thing. For example, I'm thinking about Fight Club right now. There is a Fight Club, you can watch it knowing, that Tyler Durden and the main character are the same person. It's like, and it doesn't detract absolutely anything. It just feels like one more detail in the movie. On this one, is something that you were mentioning earlier, is that it almost feels like the leitmotif, but it never gets developed enough for actually having like that weight of, oh my god, he was actually a replicant. Is it no, because he's below a layer of entertainment and escapism. There is this film noir hunting story.
Yeah, like that impactful question about who he is, it's completely buried. It's not important to the plot that you're watching. In fact, when the film ended, I was like, wait, they didn't even try to answer this?
Well, I think that historically, there was like a debate or something. I don't know if Ridley Scott, after some years, or maybe when the director's cut came out, in an interview, Ridley Scott says, like, yeah, of course he's a replicant. I mean, it's obvious.
God, directors pisses me off.
Well, in any case, I like the subtlety, how that's made, but the thing is, like, for the enjoyment of the movie and the enjoyment of the world that they are portraying, how much does the story change if he's a replicant or not? Not that much. It's a bit more like what will happen next,
Yeah, I mean, it's way more of an existential question. Like, how do we know who we are? What are we? What's our purpose in life? Why are we doing what we're doing?
But you can actually think that the Matrix has like something different. It has something similar from the perspective of how do you know if you're living in a simulation?
Right.
But I think that but the Matrix, I think there was a bit more like heavy-handed on that, because it's the core of the idea of those movies. It's about like just portraying like those 2 realities. In this case, a bit more is like, well, if you want to think about it, that's great. There are like some small signs you can just discuss with your friends about it, but it doesn't detract from the enjoyment of the movie. It's not on the first, like in the front end. It does something good or bad, I'm not sure, honestly. It's like I wasn't.
So which film do you find more engaging, The Matrix or Blade Runner?
Personally, Blade Runner. Personally, I mean, but the thing is, like, The Matrix is just, if this I qualify it as escapism, the other one I qualify it as like this is something about like just leaving your brain completely empty and just waiting. And just waiting for the stupid quotes or like, I know Kung Fu. Wow, you move like them. All of that. It's like we know we can quote that movie, a lot of quotes from that movie. If that means that it's good or not, that's a different question. Maybe we should watch it in preparation for Matrix 4, Matrix Resurrections.
Well, should we get to the questions?
Yeah, let's do it. So, could you watch it again?
Yeah, I would. This is not my favorite film, but I would definitely watch it again.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I watched it many times on the past, and I think that I will watch it. I will watch it again. Oh, something that before we actually progress a bit more with the questions, there was a bit of a I mean, I think that I mentioned earlier that I found like a parallelism with Casablanca, you know, and is that you can translate like some of the characters. It's like Roy is almost like a freedom fighter for the replicants. If he could actually figure it out how to extend the life of replicants, he could actually start a fight. So it's a bit more like Victor Laszlo in Casablanca, you know. And the role of Rachel, albeit she doesn't have any relation to Victor Laszlo, is a bit more, you know, like the classic I love you but I cannot be with you, you know, like between Rick and Elsa. Name ever man.
Ilsa.
But that may be a bit more of the parallels with film noir about like this. These are archetypes on the stories. It's like these things may actually happen. But yeah, sorry that I took like that moment for just breaking up. So, would you recommend it?
I think so, yeah. There's many situations where I would recommend this film for a number of reasons.
Yeah, I recommend this movie like so many times. It's like if someone tells me I like sci-fi, and I say, oh, so you love Blade Runner, like, I never watch it, it's like, let's just watch it right now. Let's just stop what you're doing right now, let's do it.
Even in that situation, I would be like, you need to fucking watch Blade Runner.
Could you remember it?
I will remember about 50% of it. So yes, I would say the answer is yes. I forgot the details of the plot, but not most of it.
Yeah, I think that I remember mostly everything, but I also like watch it like probably many more times than you. Maybe I watched it like 6-7 times so far.
Yeah, this was maybe my third time.
Yeah. Is there anything artistic about it?
Yes, I would argue that visually it's incredibly impressive. Even today, almost 40 years after it came out, it's very impressive.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think that from that perspective, from the artistic perspective, is perfect almost about like the care that they saw for everything, like just building that world and just displaying it in a very noir way. I think that it has like the influence in the right place. They use it, you know, in a non-abusive way. It's not heavy-handed. That's perfect for me. Is it a timeless piece?
This is really tough because I feel like if this film were released today, it would feel dated. The existential questions it asks about how do we know if we're a replicant or human, that's timeless, but I do feel like it's firmly rooted in the early 80s. So I would say it's a timely piece.
Oh, timely piece. Okay. That's interesting. Okay. I'm going to say that for me it is timeless. Personally.
And that was hard for me to answer because I can see both sides of the argument, but I cannot watch this film without thinking this is a product of the early 80s.
Yeah, but I mean, it's similar to Casablanca in that aspect. Don't you think that is like that movie couldn't have been done again in the same way? It's like there are like many things that you have like just tinker in the story in Casablanca, you know. And I had the feeling that with Blade Runner, you can even look at 2049. That is like it's tries to be like really respectful, and it adds like another topics about like the identity. It's more heavy-handed, you know. And I think that back then it's like we don't need to be that heavy-handed.
I agree with you that it's a tough call. It is. It's a tough call.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that is like the how well the special effects age is like I think that this could have been released today, maybe not as a AAA blockbuster, but it would have become like something super popular, you know?
I agree with that completely. The special effects do not feel dated at all.
Yeah, so I'm going to go that it's timeless, but I completely understand like the timely piece, because I also debated about this. Would you turn this into a TV show?
Honestly, no. Not because I think this is a bad movie or an uninteresting movie, but I'm not that into sci-fi. So I appreciated this film for what it is, but I don't need to see more of it.
Okay. I was always curious about like how well the world was built into other stories. Not only about Blade Runners, you know, but a bit more other aspects of that wall. You know, it's like I don't know if it will fall apart at that point, but it's like what else has changed? You know, how are like the outer walls? How do they look?
So you feel like the universe could be built out and explored?
Yeah, I think so. I think that is like the base is good. You know, that is that they could actually have developed like what other kind of implications are because of the existence of replicants, how space travel happens, you know, because they never mention about like if you're a human you can leave, but it's like what are the outer planets? How do you get to the outer planets? Are they in the solar system? Because otherwise it's going to be like taking a lifetime. I mean, they're never going to be like getting even a speed of light.
And I did find myself interested into this, like, where the 6 original replicants, they protested or they striked. I wanted to hear more about what happened on that off-world planet.
Yeah.
So I could see that.
Yeah, and that off-world planet was supposed to be one with mining and whatever. There's like where they sent their replicant slaves to do like the battle. You know, like the war that a human would never do. But yeah. Okay, and the last question, do you think that this movie could have been better?
My answer is no, only because I can't give a concrete example of, hey, you could have done this. I can't say that, so I'm going to say no.
Okay. Yeah, my answer is also no. There are like some pieces, you know, like the story could have been a bit tiny better, you know, or it could have like rely a bit more on the perspective of the topic of how do you say, how do you differentiate a human, and does it even matter if it is a human or a replicant when the replicant is the same? Or, you know, even like just talking a bit more about like the fantasy, that it almost feels like a Greek tragedy about like you meet your creator for killing him.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, those things could actually have been like done a bit more, but would it change? I don't think so. It's like a thing. I still think that it's like a good movie that doesn't have like any clean gap, let's say.
Yeah, there's nothing glaring that I would be like, hey, they need more character development or something like that.
Yeah. So should we score?
We should.
Alright.
So this was my pick. You have
so
to
I had
score
to score
first.
Now, I mean, I cannot avoid looking into how do you say, into the score that I gave to Casablanca, and I personally, this is a bit more of a personal thing. If I'm objective, I would give it like the same score, but I think that personally, like, because of it was an 8.5, I'm going to be giving Blade Runner a 9.
Wow.
Well, okay. Because I think about like all the influence that it had, you know, and it's a movie that I can rewatch infinitely. I mean, I will watch it again today.
So my score is an 8 because I think this is a good film and there's something that elevates it because of the visual aspect and whatever it is that makes it more timeless, which does exist even though I said it was a timely film. So it's a good film and elevated, so I'm going to give it an 8.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the average is an 8.5. So Casablanca is supposed to be better for a combined rating.
Well, Casablanca is one of the best films of all time. So,
okay.
According to other people, we scored.
To other
right.
people. Okay, sure. I think that Blade Runner is in most of those lists too.
I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, because if you have to have like something that is like, hey, just give something to the sci-fi nerds, you know, just put something on that list. Where are you going to put? You know,
we have to be inclusive.
The Matrix,
so
exactly. Yeah, we had to make them feel smart. Is that what you're going to put? The Matrix?
No, we have to do Blade Runner.
Yep. Okay, so this was your pick, but we were supposed to be watching Blade Runner 2049 next, but we decided to take like a small, short break in between, and we're going to be watching Stillwater. I think that it was.
We are. Something relevant, something in theaters, starring Matt Damon. So we will follow up with Blade Runner 2049, but next will be Stillwater.
Alright. Well, to all those people that right now they're like really disappointed, they're like writing like hate mail right now to us about like, no, we want Blade Runner 2049. Anything to tell them?
Thank you for listening. Thank you for your patience, and Wash your hands.
Okay, bye.